talk about your club.
Um, I'm glad to talk about it.
All right, give me about 20 seconds and we'll your club. Yep. And we will be in business. I'll introduce you. Okay. I want to put this a little closer. All right. Hi, I'm Meta Spencer. And today I want to go to Tashkent, Uzbekistan, and to Vilnius, Lithuania. And then I have a pal who I want to talk to here in Toronto. So we're going to have a fun event, getting acquainted and talking about Russian expatriates and how to, I don't know how to help them. I can't help them, but I'm all in favor of them. And some of them are in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. And so we're going to talk about that. Let me tell you who's in Tashkent. My friend Konstantin Samoilov, who's a Russian who's moved to Tashkent because he doesn't like the idea of going to kill Ukrainians. And he has collected over 1,000 other Russians who have also left the country, mostly for the same reason. And they hang out together. He created a breakfast club, which was going to be a support group for Russian expatriates, and it's that and more now because I gather they have political interests as well as their concerns about trying to survive in a new environment. And in Vilnius, Lithuania, is my friend Andrei Kamenchikov. Andrei is a leader of a network of, say the acronym again, Andrei, because I never can remember your acronyms.
GPAC, it's the Global Partnership for Prevention of Armed Conflict, and I am the coordinator for the East European branch.
I'm not hearing you, dear.
Hello?
No.
Hello, do you hear me now?
Just yell. I guess that's the only thing to tell you to do. Try it. I'll edit it the best I can.
Can you hear me at all now?
Now it's fine, but it was, yeah. So yell.
Okay. So my name is Andrei Kamenchikov, and I coordinate the Eastern European part of GPAC, which stands for the Global Partnership for Prevention of Armed Conflict. It's a global civil society peace-building network, and I coordinate the Eastern European branch of it.
And it is, as I understand it, kind of an umbrella organization of peace organizations, right? Is that a fair characterization?
I guess so, yeah. Even though some of the organizations are, they don't position themselves like peace organizations, but one or another way they work in areas that are related to peace building.
Mm-hmm. Good. Excellent. And here in Toronto is my friend Jill Carr-Harris. Jill is a big time Gandhian. I guess that's the quickest way to characterize her. And she's been living in India. She's a Canadian. And she's been living in India for, I think, 37 years. And she's married to Raja Gopal, who is one of the great Gandhian leaders today. The ones, there are apparently not so many left in India, which is going pretty right wing and politically in a direction that I don't always like. But there are some people who actually do constructive work, and she and her partner are engaged with helping especially young men to get skills so that village men can get skills that they can use to make a living. Is that a fair characterization?
I would say young men and women who are from marginalized backgrounds to get above subsistence and to make a living. Yeah.
I say men. I don't know why I did that, because of course you specialize in women. I think you take the female side of the equation, and if there's a division of labor, he does the male side, sort of. But I guess there isn't that much. Okay, so you people don't really know each other, at least not. I'm not sure Jill and Constantine have met before, have you?
On a Zoom, I believe, Constantine, we met. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we
Okay.
met on the Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And but in terms of their work background, I think Jill and Andre have been in the game a lot longer. Konstantin was a businessman, an executive in an energy company in Russia, until he made this decisive switch in his lifestyle. And who knows, you might be a businessman again. It'll be okay. So anyway, I want to start off, if you will, by having Constantine talk to us about his club, because I think I should also say maybe that Andre is in Vilnius, not because that's where he lives, but because he travels around trying to contact people and stir up peace. And I was, there's always a tendency to stir up trouble. That's what I do, but he stirs up peace. And he is on a trip now to talk, I believe, with people like the Breakfast Club folks, people who've left Russia um, because they didn't approve of the war, and to see whether anything can be done to help bring them together so that they collectively can do something very constructive. So your work is very similar to the breakfast clubbing that Constantine does, but Andre, also you're doing work that is very similar to what Jill has done for the last 37 years. So that's our beginning. I want us to know what goes on in the minds of these people who have left Russia. Tell us about your breakfast club, Constantine.
Thank you, Meta. I'd like to start with telling that Andrei Kamenchiko is actually a member of our breakfast club. He visited in the spring, in March, I believe.
April.
Attended a few meetings, attended Sunday lecture, met quite a few people. Then we followed up with strategic session discussion, and so there's two of us today. And this is the story behind the Breakfast Club. I left Russia in September 20 of last year, 22. And it was, well, basically I had 36 hours to leave. I made a decision after mobilization was announced, and I told that story numerous times on my YouTube channel. And 36 hours to leave. It's really difficult when you have to wrap your life up and cut off your bridges, end life in one place, and you step into darkness, into unknown. So that's what I did. I flew to Tashkent, Uzbekistan, through Tajikistan. So basically I landed in Tajikistan, crossed the border on foot to Uzbekistan, and made it to Tashkent. And then I saw, as personally devastating experience, incredibly devastating. It's basically, you feel like your life is over and you don't know what to do next, because you leave so abruptly without a plan, without like all your plans for life, they just get canceled at once. And for a couple of days, I was just wandering on the streets of Tashkent, listening to music, trying not to think of anything. Okay, it was too painful and didn't work that well. And then at one point, I decided to get together with others, that they were thousands of people just like me wandering around the streets of Tashkent. And, I started inviting people for coffee, for breakfast. And I used different means of, giving shout outs, different Telegram channels. I created my own Telegram channel. And one by one, people started showing up. And to lure more people, I invited everyone to breakfast is on me. You show up, I'll buy you breakfast. But the main purpose was to help myself and help the others. It's incredibly difficult to be by yourself alone in a situation like that. And by sitting with a person right next to you at the one table in the same situation, speaking to a person is incredibly therapeutic. And that's what happened. We started getting together, and I remember the first meeting when quite a few people showed up, 7 grown men in their 40s, some businessmen, engineer, doctor, all established, not like youngsters. And all of a sudden we got together, and then everyone started talking at once. It's like attending Alcoholic Anonymous meeting in a way, only we don't drink. And yeah, and then everyone started just unloading there, and everyone started feeling better. And that's basically from there and on we developed. There was one person, it was me, and now we have 1,000+ people, about 850 in our Telegram group, and over 200 that don't want to join Telegram, but they're here in Tashkent, members of Tashkent Breakfast Club. I started organizing lectures every Sunday around November, because I was feeling that everyone was not doing well psychologically. And the first shock was over, and then the culture shock set in. So I started inviting psychologists to help people somehow. And then we started doing Sunday big meetings when we pick an expert, and an expert says something about a topic of expertise. And around New Year, about a year ago, I decided that mission needs to be broader. And I started looking for Ukrainians here in Tashkent and inviting them to our table, basically. So we sit together with Ukrainians and break bread with them, and just try to make amends. And the rest is history. A few weeks ago, we celebrated 1-year anniversary of our relocation, of our exodus from Russia, and 1 year of Breakfast Club. So made a film. We had some speakers, some guests. The biggest speaker was the ambassador of Estonia to the Central Asia. Yeah, he came from Kazakhstan to take participation in the Breakfast Club. It was there were Ukrainians, there were Russians, Uzbek, Israelis. It was a great meeting, gathering. And that's short history of our group.
Okay, well, I want to know about your how they are doing, how these people are doing now. How many of the people, I presume that your contact is made with them when they arrive or while they're in Tashkent, but that a lot of them move on to other countries or other locations. Is that the case?
Meta, my statistics says this: many people treated Uzbekistan as a transit, not the destination. I would say that about 40% came and went, and about 40 or 50% stayed, because Uzbekistan is a very Russian-friendly location. It's probably one of the most friendliest in the world for Russians, especially if you don't have to make your living in Uzbekistan. If you work remotely, it's Russian-speaking country. It's very loyal and very very nice attitude to Russians. It's expensive. It's probably as expensive as Moscow, but generally nice climate. The mountains nearby, so it's a very convenient and safe location for the Russians. So I'd say perhaps half, something like that, stayed. And
Now,
half,
as I understand it, they can get in without a visa, right?
no
Which is
visa. That's right. They can stay indefinitely. We can stay indefinitely, no visa.
and there are lots of other problems with most other countries, right? There are only a few countries that will let people walk right in from Russia, right? Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, that's the only one. In other countries, you don't have to have visas. For example, Kazakhstan, but you have to do visa run to leave country once every 90 days and come back. It's called a visa run. So
visa run. A visa run,
run.
is it? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the term that we commonly use.
Okay. Okay. Actually, Andre can probably brief us a little bit on which countries have the same hospitable attitude toward Russians. I know you've been going around to a lot of the post-Soviet countries. And where are they as friendly to Russians, and how do they differ, different countries, in the attitude of the general population toward Russians, and the ease of letting people come in?
Every country has its specifics. And one thing that people need to understand that their citizens of Russia have two types of passports. One is considered an internal passport. It's a document that's used internally, and that's a document that every person has. If he's 18, or I think it's even starting 14 or 15, you get this document.
You're mumbling, but listen, is it something you're required to carry around with you all the time? Or if you're going to take a trip, say from one part of the country to another, do you have to have it done?
Here's what I'm explaining. There are two documents. One is this internal passport that everybody has. Another is a external passport that is like the typical passport of any nation, that is used by citizens of that nation to travel internationally. Mm-hmm. And that is a document that is given for 5 or 10 years. You need to apply for it. It's a bureaucratic procedure. So probably I would say that less than half of the population of Russia, maybe only a third or so, actually have a functioning external passport. And without that document, there are only a few countries that people can enter. With the internal passport, I don't think Uzbekistan also allows Russians to, I don't know, Konstantin might know better. I don't think Uzbekistan allows Russians without this external passport to enter its borders. I think it's Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Armenia, and Belarus. 4 countries that do not require that you have this external passport.
Not Georgia?
No, not Georgia. What that means is that if you just take randomly, 2/3 of a population do not have a document that they can use to enter any place except these 4 countries. Now, then there are the people that do have the Russian external passport, and they have a wider set of options. They can, and then the question is, do countries require visas, special permission, or not? And in that case, now you have countries like Uzbekistan, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Moldova, where people can go. Also, I think Israel doesn't require visas. China, Mongolia, and so forth. So it's a wider range of options. Mm-hmm. Then you have the issue of the attitude of the government of a country and the attitude of the population of a country. For example, in Georgia, you have a government that has a fairly decent relationship with the Russian leadership, and the country is open for Russians to enter without a visa. But the attitude of the population in Georgia to Russians is more difficult because, of course, Georgia, it lost part of its territory because of the armed conflicts where Russia was a part, not on the side of Georgia. So as a result, there is an issue with relationships between, like in Georgia, where you have a substantive Russian community, there's very little effective interaction. And the population in Georgia, some people benefit because Russians come with money, as tourists or so forth. They rent apartments and so forth. Others don't like that because as a result of the costs of like renting an apartment in Tbilisi have gone way up. So
are you implying that the attitude of people on the street toward incoming Russians is less cordial in Georgia than it might be, let's say, in Tashkent?
Yes, I think so. Absolutely. Overall.
Mhm.
I've seen when I was in Georgia, I've seen like on one of the subway stations, posters, just on the escalator next to escalator, someone just put on posters like that actually said Russians live in fear, and things like that.
And
Not
Russians go home, and I also have we have a center in Tbilisi, and I have some Georgian background, so I've been there quite often, and yeah, it's very noticeable. Very
yeah,
noticeable.
yeah.
Well,
So
can I ask, what about India, Jill? How is it, how easy would it be for Russians to try to go and settle in India?
So India has a very strict policy of giving people any kind of permits. So they could probably come on tourist visas, but to get a OCI card or a PIO card or anything which grants you longer term permanency is very difficult, almost not possible. So I don't think we have any long term Russian communities as far as I.
What about the attitude of average, whatever, Indians toward average Russians?
So there's been a fairly cordial relationship between the Indian government and the Russian government. But then India is balancing its interests with the US and with the security of Asia, which demands, US against the Chinese threat. So I think it's sort of a mixed, more strategic, pragmatic relationship than it is, one of, camaraderie or
Compare, if you will, social interactions that you've had about Russia in Canada, Georgia, and India. Can you say that there are different characteristic points of view or feelings about Russia?
So I have part of my family living in Moscow. So my brother married a Russian woman, and he is on, I think, some sort of visa which doesn't give him full citizenship rights. He spends a lot of time in Georgia. So he has, given us a window on seeing Russians in a very positive light. However, my Georgian cousins who believe that Russia has occupied 30%, 25, 30% of the country, South Ossetia and Abkhazia, are not favorable. So I've had the benefit of seeing both sides of this equation. And I also have a Ukrainian daughter-in-law, who is of Russian heritage. So her parents have been, ousted out of Odessa. They live in Denmark with their other daughter. So I've had quite a bit of different sides of the prism, but feel a closeness to a lot of Russian people, but have seen also the difficulties. We tried to set up in the South Caucasus for many years a peace zone where Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia would be more autonomous, independent of Moscow, because as a result of the Soviet Union, all roads lead to Moscow, right? And so any veering off to Europe has been, but we were trying as a Gandhian stance to try to bring the three countries together. That has been extremely difficult, not only because of the internal difficulties between Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Turkey's role and so on, but I'm happy to see that Georgia has now played a more important role in the peacekeeping of Azerbaijan and Armenia very recently. So my experience is the very great difficulties of trying to get any autonomous autonomous ness from, from Russia in building those societies and those economies. So that's really the vantage point the location I have in this discussion.
The position that I know several friends living in Canada who are Russian and who are very opposed to the war. And they are in touch with their own families, of course, but always it was so acrimonious that phone calls they continue making phone calls, but they pretend there's no war going on. They never mention it as a way of, keeping any kind of relationship going. Would you say that anything that severe has occurred in your own family among all these people who no doubt have quite different points of view?
Yeah, absolutely. The acrimony is under the surface. And so one has to be very diplomatic in maintaining the family relationship, surely.
Andre, I know that part of your mission as a peace worker is to try to see what can be done to exploit the contacts that Russian expatriates have with their families and friends and former colleagues to try to change or influence public opinion or at least their families, some people's opinion in Russia. Tell us a little bit about that, and I'd like to see how you and Konstantin view the possibilities. I'm not sure you are very optimistic. I want to know whether Konstantin is more so. But Andre, you start off and then let's see what Konstantin thinks about your prospects for success.
Well, yeah, I've been spending lots of time this year trying to see if this new wave of immigrants from Russia, who hundreds of thousands, if not millions, we don't know the figures, if these people who left because of the war might also become effective communicators in trying to bring more or less objective information about what is happening to the attention of their circle of friends and relatives and acquaintances in Russia. It is a challenging task. So far, I was able to get some groups of people to speak about the general and to start learning, generally about communication and how to improve their communication capacities. It is hard for me to judge today whether that had an effect, or I know it had some effect, but how much that had an effect on their capability to speak to their friends and relatives in Russia about sensitive issues. I'm still working on that. We're still trying to expand, and we're basically just trying to find, we're walking, we're feeling our way, in a cave, where there's no light, there's no really examples that we can follow very well. So we're just trying to find ways how that can be more effective. But I think that it's still something worth exploring because, again, with hundreds of thousands of people that left, they have access to millions and millions of people in Russia. And what's more important, they have access to many of the people that they have access to in Russia are people that you can say belong to the silent majority of the Russian population. These are people who will not on their own make an effort to search for independent information on the internet, for example, about what is going on today. And that's the issue, because if someone wants to find information, he can. And there are millions and millions of people in Russia who understand more or less what is happening. Obviously oppose the current policies of their government, even though under the harsh political regime, they there's not much that they can do, very little that they can do. But nonetheless, that's very important. But uh, there's the silent majority who do not necessarily like what has happened. They don't necessarily support the war as such. It's not true that the war is supported by the vast majority of the Russian population. Most people don't like the war, but they have been silenced, and they have been brainwashed to the level where they kind of accept the policies. They think that this is not something good, but something that's inevitable, and we don't have any influence on it in any case. So let's treat it like an earthquake, something that's bad, but we can't do it about. So that's the kind of people that are very important to reach.
Okay,
It's
I'd like to hear whether Constantine has a different experience, or yeah, just how does his comment fit with your own experience with the breakfast clubbers?
Meta. This is actually pretty short and straight to the point. Tons of people, well, old people who are here in Breakfast Club, they have family or friends remaining in Russia, constantly communicating. Some who are left there do not support the war, some do. And people
some of the people left in Russia do not, and some do.
Do
But
not,
practically all of the people in Tashkent do not support the war, right?
non-supports. I'm talking about the ones who left in Russia. Some parents, and so forth. And we communicate on daily basis, but that's personal communication, so it's possible to reach them. It's possible, but each one of us reinvents the wheel, so to speak. That's pretty much it. Andrei, when he was visiting, he saw that. We even talked to people about that.
Okay. Now, when they call, in fact, I'm still touchy and cautious. Well, more than cautious. I simply do not call people in Russia anymore because I'm worried that I might get them in trouble, or at least I'm worried that they think they might get in trouble by talking to me, whether or not that's real. Now, how real would that be?
That's true.
Do people ever get in trouble in Russia for receiving and being part of a phone call from somebody abroad who talks bad about the government?
They will not get in trouble if it's just a simple call from abroad about the family business or friends. Once they start discussing plans against the government, plotting and stuff like that, I'm pretty sure that people in Russia are under direct risk.
So somebody's listening to a lot of the phone calls.
I think most phone calls are listened to.
Really? So even people calling from Tashkent have to think about whether or not they might get their family in trouble.
If they don't discuss anything against the government, they do not get in trouble. Even if they criticize, but they don't plot, if you know what I mean. They don't make certain plans, actions, and.
Well, now that's where the problem lies, right? Because what I was hoping was that we could create a vast worldwide network of expatriate Russians who make lots and lots of phone calls to Russia and stir up resistance, some kind of opposition. But please, how realistic is that as a fantasy of mine?
Meta, would you please repeat the first part? I didn't hear the first part.
Well, I'm imagining that I mentioned this to Andrei before, that his work and what I would like to support and even take some initiative in is getting Russians who've left the country to make a lot of phone calls to their family and friends back at home and try to inform them and change the opinions that are prevailing there. Well, obviously, if they would be getting their families in trouble, that doesn't have much prospect of success. What what is possible, and how does it fit with what Andre is already doing?
I would say lead by the example. It's not making phone calls trying to convince them. The ones who know, they know. The ones who oppose, you very hard to change their opinion. If people start opposing, conflicting over the phone, they most often decide to drop off talking about that. They talk about family, they don't talk about politics.
Mm.
So, but organizing abroad and leading by the example, I think that's possible.
Okay, let's talk about how to do that, because it's the second choice, although very, very important. Russians living abroad, I presume many of them will retain a lifelong desire to change the system in Russia, to improve, to democratize the country, etc. And if all of the Russian expatriates, not all, but if a lot of Russian expatriates actually formed a significant network talking about politics outside the country, is there any chance in which they would, as a group, have any kind of influence, either
any kind
among the
of
Russians at home or with governments, foreign governments in international relations with Russia's government?
I apologize. I didn't hear the last word. You mean, what did you say again about the foreign governments? The last
Well,
part.
I can imagine two ways in which, let's say there are many breakfast clubs all over the world of Russian expatriates like yours, and they are very political, and they all come up with a similar vision of what they would like Russia to become politically. If they collectively have conversations worldwide among themselves and come up with a vision and an agenda for Russia, would this have any influence? And if it has any influence, you say it's probably not going to have much influence inside Russia, but would it have any influence outside Russia? Would this new network of political, let's say, expatriate democratic Russians have any influence among, with, let's say, the Canadian government, or the government in Tashkent or in Uzbekistan or any place else? Is there any way in which Russians could have influence in the world in terms of policy if they could get their act together?
Understood. Actually, I've traveled to different countries. I've been to Thailand, I've been to Turkey, and every place has an SKP community. Turkey has huge community. Thailand has quite large community, and I tried to establish breakfast club in each one of those countries.
Oh,
It's
have you?
difficult. Yes, it's difficult, but possible. We can organize, we can communicate, but we don't know what to do, basically. There's nowhere to go. We don't know. We're like blind kittens.
Okay. Now, when I mentioned the idea of trying to help create a dialogue among expatriate Russians or escapee Russians, I was discouraged by Andre, who said, all they'll do is get together and fight. So, Andre, tell me, what do you think?
No, it's a little more complicated. Of course, people will, if you start discussing politics, there's probably a clear agenda that a majority of people who were forced to leave because of the political situation in Russia would agree on. They want Russia to be a normal country, safe, where human rights are respected, where, property rights are respected, and so forth. So there are lots of basic things that I think people will agree on. The big issue is, will that have any practical influence on what is actually happening in the country? My idea is that if we can encourage people to become more effective communicators with their circles of, with their contacts in Russia, then what we can do is we can't demand, I don't feel that I have the moral right to demand from anyone in Russia any specific action that can put a person's safety in jeopardy. That's not something that I'm willing to do. But I am willing to express my opinions on things and to share my opinions with anyone, any contact I have in Russia. It's it's their decision then what to do with these opinions, to believe me or not, to take action or not. That's a decision that people should make in the country. What we can do from outside is simply provide people with certain information, and especially try to maintain a channel of information so even those who are not critically minded, who are not really thinking much about is the policies of the government justified or not, and who are not asking these difficult questions of themselves, at least are exposed to some alternative information. Now, my calculation is that as long as this war lasts, and it will last, it seems, for a long time, the demands that the Russian government will be putting on every ordinary Russian citizen will continue to grow. Not very fast, maybe, but for some, they demand the ultimate sacrifice of a person, giving up his life for Putin's ambitions. For someone, it's related to their well-being, to the well-being of their relatives, to the lives of their close relatives, friends, children, and so forth. And all of that means that the burden that the Russian government is putting on the shoulders of every ordinary citizen is growing. And at some point, every person will have to question the validity of the arguments that the government is selling to him when it tries to increase this burden. Mm-hmm. And the personal choice that a person will be making will depend on the information that he has been exposed to. If the only information he has been exposed to is government propaganda, then he'll just probably go on with whatever demands are imposed on him. Mm-hmm. But if he has been at least exposed to alternative views, that might give him some thought, some background, some base to try to take a different action. Mm-hmm. It's not in someone's personal interest to go to war, to give up your life, or to risk your well-being, or to leave your family, or things like that, or to allow your children to go to, or allow your husband to go to, or doing other things, not necessarily going to fight, but for example, going to, people are going to these territories, being sent to perform various tasks, do work in these territories that Russia now claims are integral part of Russia, territories that it conquered.
Okay, let's play with this.
Things like that. And so the idea, I just want to finish, the idea is if we can provide information that might have some effect on the personal choices that people are making, not because we told them to make this choice, but because in the, as they weigh the different options for themselves, they will have alternative point of view that they will have to consider, or that they might want to consider.
Okay, I think that's very promising, because I think that if you're going to ask people, I think the world is full of people who would prefer democracy and human rights and all the things that we value, but they have no idea how to struggle for these things in a
Meta, Andrew,
situation.
can I add something?
Yeah.
You have no idea how many angry people there are here. All of us are extremely angry. We feel betrayed. We feel absolutely enraged. Okay.
Right.
This is a force. It's not being used. It's not being organized. There's no direction to move, nothing, but there's a force. And as time goes, people become mellower. Okay. Because, they
Mellower?
start mellower. Yeah. If someone talked to us last November, oh my God, that would have been a different story. Now everyone's kind of moving on with their lives, okay?
Mhm.
But still, people are gonna be angry for quite a bit, quite some time, and nothing's being done. That's why I'm trying to organize the breakfast clubs in different countries, at least to have some network, okay? And I'd say 10 to 15% of people are activists. A lot of them, if you approach and start talking politics, probably a lot would drop out. But there are quite a few people who'd be involved.
Mhm.
Could
Okay,
could
well,
I
what
say
if
something,
every,
Mita? Could I
yeah,
say something at this point?
absolutely.
I'm just wondering, Konstantin, Andre, if so I see you, Konstantin, setting up a set of affinity groups. They're basically affinity around what? Well, around you started in giving them support in their desperation of being out of the country. Now possibly it's evolved a little bit where you're looking at wouldn't it be nice if this war stopped so we could, have our families and get back to what we would like to have in the future. And probably I'm just guessing some of these 10 to 15% activists are also thinking, what would it look like in a post-Putin Russia? What would that look like? What are we striving for, right? Now, I put that forward because it's implicit. People are practical, pragmatic. They're not just idealists, but there's some sort of they're visioning also at the same time, right? Otherwise, what gives you hope? you know,
Yeah.
you need some sort of hope. Like, where are we going with all this? It's not just about whining with each other or getting into this real cynical nothing works existential problem, right? So we need some sort of hope. So I think the social visioning, if it gets a little more, I'm not saying it should be imposed by anybody, but if it can emerge that, okay, next year isn't next year, correct me if I'm wrong, we need to renew Putin's mandate in 24 for the next 12 years.
It's been renewed already.
It's been renewed, yeah, but
We just don't know about it yet.
there's a formal process, right? So, that is a hook when you're organizing people in affinity groups. That's a hook you get onto, right? Okay, 24. We want to give people an idea what a post-Putin era looks like, not just say it's going to happen, it's inevitable, closed story. If you don't make those openings, people can't push forward. The affinity groups get locked into resignation, which is a very easy thing. Yeah. So
you answer her, and then I have a thought.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say one more thing, Meta, which is if Andrei's communication about the situation with the war can also include a sense that the majority of people would like to get beyond this war, find ways to not just, give information, but give information in a way that people can use that information in a way forward. So those were just my observations on what you said. I'd love your response, Konstantin.
can I comment? We 100% of us, we discuss all the time what the future of Russia looks like. Post-Putin, not post-Putin. That's all of us. It's what I meant, 10-15% the active. If you say you got to do this and this, okay, we're on with you. That's what I meant, 10-15%. But 100% are definitely, you know.
But is there a way it could come up with, sorry, Meta, one more intervention and then I'll be quiet. Is there a way that that can get put into some sort of consensus document, something which is giving people a way to articulate this rather than just offhanded comments? You know what I mean? Can this be more articulated?
Constantine?
So no voice. Can't hear you.
Your voice is down.
I was having some technical difficulties. I was trying to, internet is not the most stable here in Uzbekistan, as Andrei knows. So I totally apologize. I missed, Jill, I missed what you said. Could you repeat that?
I was just saying, can these post-Putin kind of statements get somehow more formalized in a way that people are not just making offhanded comments, but are sort of seeing, this is what we're visualizing, this is what we're working towards, so that you can build a kind of a consensus across these breakfast clubs, because otherwise there's nothing linking people, right? There has to be some sort, I'm not saying a common agenda, that's too simplistic, but some sort of common document that emerges from a process. That
I understand. Yeah. Jill, first of all, is Breakfast Club here in Tashkent that's well established, and I'm the founder and I influence. We have administrators. We can do it within our Tashkent Breakfast Club. We have to be very careful about showing any political actions here in Tashkent, because we're being watched by the intelligence community, the local, and we've been warned, folks. Not just us, but all the Russians have been warned. If you show any kind of political activity, you'd better leave Uzbekistan, or we'll make you leave. Okay, so we're bound by certain rules in this country. Okay, even though it's not against Uzbek government or anything, but still, it's a fact that we have to take into account. So, but we still can do things like what you're saying here in Tashkent Breakfast Club. But in order to consolidate other breakfast clubs, we need to establish them, because I tried, I got some contacts, but I cannot say that, oh, there's one in Thailand, there's one in Turkey, there's one in Georgia. I know some people there, and I'm trying my best, but sometimes it feels like I'm running against the wind, and it's me against the world alone. Okay, it's just my ideas. Okay, that's it, and I'm doing my best, but I can't say that I can attract people like I said in those countries, and we'll start drafting something. Okay, just here in Tashkent. So that's where I am standing at right now.
Thank you.
It's literally me against the world.
Is that both of you have been talking, or we've talked a little bit about a vision of what Russia should look like after Putin. And of course, that's essential. And yet we've already discussed how difficult it is to have that conversation. But there's another dimension, that is how to get there, how to get to a post-Putin world or a more democratic world, how to make some changes. And in that, I think Russians are in the same situation as people in every other country. That is, we need methods of getting social change that are themselves nonviolent. And there are technologies, there are strategies, there are methods, there are approaches that people have studied. For example, I was a friend of Gene Sharp's, and Gene Sharp spent many, many years, his life basically, studying the cases around the world in which people have tried to resist against a dictator or some other situation that they found oppressive and untenable, and yet wanted people who wanted to do so without violence or making too much trouble. And so there are many, there are people who actually make their professional lives out of trying to develop ways of creating social change that are not, have no discernible harmful side effects. Jill does that, of course, as Gandhians in India and everywhere else. Andre is doing that as well. But it's possible to even give courses on how to do nonviolent resistance and which things work under what circumstances, etc. There's quite an extensive literature on that kind of thing, but it's not well known in any country. I mean, people here in Canada or the US or Europe who want to make some changes have very limited ideas about how to go about it with any prospect of success. So there's always a gain to be made in giving courses on nonviolence or trainings on how to do it. So I'm wondering whether that might not be the first step. That is, give some trainings or conversations about methods of resisting or making social changes that have some prospect of success. And before you get to the point of what are we going to do, what kind of government do Russians want to have once they get rid of the one they have now? So is there room for that kind of thing? I'm thinking, for example, Jill and Andre and many other people that I know who have studied nonviolence, as Gene Sharp's people have, or the people who used to be around Peter Ackerman, other people in universities and so on, give courses on nonviolence. Is there a point of having, for example, a series of shows in this forum series that might be of interest to teaching people how to try to get some social changes when you're in a bad situation and you don't want to make it worse? I don't know whom to ask, but I think Konstantin first, and then Andre.
I will answer. Meta, first of all, this is very new to me.
Yeah.
I know close to nothing about the methods, what you said. We've never studied political science, never studied, opposing or anything like that. So I'm basically.
Let me tell you, political scientists don't know either. Most political scientists are not aware of this. But go on.
I guarantee that people that I've spoken with here, they have no clue. Okay. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. I think it's really easy to paint a picture of what Russia should look like. I know I have it painted in my head. Many people imagine, and it's not that difficult. I made streams about it. You need to have certain free institutions in the country. And, you need to have people understanding basic ideas, and that's pretty much a good start. But how to get there, they have no clue. I have no clue. Okay, and I think it'd be good to at least to get an introduction to some knowledge.
Okay, Andre.
Yeah, well, I should say that I'm actually in the process of editing a translation of Michael Beer's.
I can't hear you. Get closer.
Well, I'm speaking right in the microphone. I don't know what the problem is. Do you hear me now? Okay. Yes. So I'm right now in the process actually of editing the Russian translation of Michael Beer's book on, where he analyzes nonviolent methods and so forth. But In the
Hold on, whose book about what?
Michael Beer, Nonviolent
Oh,
International
okay.
Director.
Mhm.
He tried to kind of do a review of the 198 methods of Gene Sharp and see what new stuff has came up and so forth in the years since Gene originally came up with all these ideas. However, on a practical point of view, you should understand that, like Konstantin said, and that's true in many, unfortunately, in many of the places where significant Russian expat communities exist today. As soon as you start doing professional trainings on nonviolent action and things like that, that might jeopardize the safety of these people. Plus, it also should be understood that these people are in exile. They don't really have the opportunity to practice nonviolent action, against the Russian government, except maybe some possible demonstrations in front of Russian embassies and things like that don't really. I mean, it's a good thing, but they don't really have effect. And in many countries, they can put people in jeopardy just for doing that. In Kyrgyzstan, like one of the countries that I visited, there were cases where Russians found themselves in deep trouble just after bringing a yellow and blue bouquet of flowers to a statue of some Ukrainian famous person, things like that.
Yeah.
Because again, we're not speaking about Europe. We're speaking about Central Asian countries that have their own authoritarian regimes and that are also very, very much linked to Russia economically and in many other ways. So we have to be very realistic on what we can expect from people in these areas. The other thing is that, in theory, it's good, but in practice, if what we can do today, if we can at least encourage people to speak more, to convey their view of events, of political developments to their circle of contacts in Russia in a way that won't be seen as offensive for their contacts. So their contacts would at least, they might disagree, but they will at least hear that. That's already a big step. It's way, way far from, any position where we can, do actually nonviolent trainings in Russia today. Honestly speaking, with all respect, I don't see that as something that is immediate perspective. It's interesting for people to study. There should be materials available about what kind of nonviolent methods are possible and things like that. And that's the important thing, to have that in Russian language available.
Yeah.
But in terms of doing practical trainings and things like that, right now, I'm not sure it's going to be a very effective strategy.
Okay, Jill?
Yeah, I just want to echo what you're saying, Andre. I think it makes a lot of sense that so our techniques in India are very different from the Gene Sharp techniques. They come from a different origin. It deals with different problems. So what we could offer is to talk about how we have handled in India certain nonviolent practices and giving agency to certain, marginalized communities. And these are the techniques. So if there was an interest, people could then see that and think of what the application is. And then you see how that could be built on. So that would be a realistic first step, in my view, is just to share techniques and experiences, implicitly saying, getting people to think how that's relevant in our situation, right? So that I think would be a very good step. So I would reinforce what you said.
And I'll add to that.
Sorry.
First of all, I agree with Andre. The only country I know that allows for free political protest against Russian government is Georgia. and in every other country of the former USSR, in the Central Asia, you'll get into big trouble for showing any kind of support to Ukraine or against Russia or whatever. They just don't like showing of political views here.
Mhm.
And Andre, what I would add to that is, it wouldn't hurt to have them and get acquainted and get the knowledge, if you know what I mean. It's like seeds, you're seeding.
Well, look, my feeling is that it probably is impossible to train people in the sense of actually suggesting here's how you do things in Russia, in particular recommendations that might involve how to oppose the government. Any specific things are maybe impossible, but there are general principles, there are general findings that have been established that are worth knowing, even if you never think you're going to use them. I taught a course at the University of Toronto on nonviolence and negotiation. And we talked about a number of the methods. I had them read Gandhi's Experiments with Truth, and what's the title, Jill? That's quite right, but
No, that's right.
But also there, I don't think we have to make a choice between Gene Sharp's approach and Gandhi's approach, because all of these have insights that
Sure.
can be learned. And I was teaching university students who probably never in their lives will have a need to stand up against a dictator, but it's not a bad thing to learn. And my experience also has been, and I haven't been going to Russia lately, but for a long time I went to Russia at least once a year for many years. And I really am a little puzzled why it's true, but every other country I went to, I could have a conversation about nonviolent resistance and sound credible and be accepted as somebody making some kind of sense. But Russians had no interest, and I could not understand it. Even people, I was close to people in Gorbachev's government who had, and I was close to dissidents, people who practiced nonviolence, but who had no theoretical interest in the general ideas. They were doing things. They were being sent to prison and all kinds of other things, exiled to Siberia, and doing things that were real nonviolent resistance, but without any attempt to understand it as a general principle, which always puzzled me because, Russia, Tolstoy, I mean, you should, out of just plain curiosity about your own culture, people in Russia should be very interested in nonviolence, because there are certain tensions and traditions there. The traditions of the Doukhobors, for example, a number of places where there should be an interest. But I found then that there was very little interest in understanding nonviolent methods. And I would think it'd be possible to give a course in English for sure, but maybe even in Russian. I don't know who could do it in Russian, but there certainly must be people in many countries who have some expertise in nonviolent methods. I'm thinking of, for example, Erica Chenoweth and Maria Stefan with their wonderful book. People who could give courses on, lectures and forums, discussions of nonviolent methods that would be something to put in people's bank account in case the time ever comes when they need to practice it or when they could use it. So just, without jeopardizing things. Now, I would imagine that people in Russia could watch YouTube without any trouble. If we put on shows on YouTube, would anybody get in trouble just by watching?
No.
All right.
YouTube is free, it's legal, you can watch anything.
Well, this is going to be our show today. It's going to be on YouTube. Now, if we made some more shows with people giving talks in Russian about, which I don't know whether I can do, but I could surely get it done in English. Would there be any interest?
There would be interest. There would be interest. Meta and Andre, I agree with you that Russians have a history of political inactivity. And I know I was born and raised in Russia, and the general idea among people is, what can we do? There's nothing we can do. So we're not gonna even try, okay? Because they believe in that their country does not belong to them. It's not their country. Okay, it's someone else's. It's the higher ups. It's the ones who are on top. They know what to do. They know how to run it, and so forth. I think it's a very historical phenomenon that is in Russia. But please understand that in the last 15, 18 months, lots of things have changed. And a lot of people, in my rough estimation, around between 2 and 3 million people left Russia in the situation just as I did. I didn't want to leave. I like Russia very much. I wanted to keep on living in Moscow. I like Moscow, but I was forced. I feel I'm betrayed by my government and by my people who support the war. So I was forced to leave. And it's a personal tragedy for me and for, 2 million other Russians. And we have changed. We're not those politically inactive, Russians that used to be. Okay, at least some of us have changed because difficulties, the hardship changes people, and a lot of people are changed here, and that I know what I'm talking about. I'm seeing it around me. Like I said, 10-15% definitely, perhaps even more. So lectures like that, or not even lectures, knowledge in different forms, would be very helpful.
Okay, Andre.
Well, I agree that knowledge would be very helpful, and I agree with what Konstantin said. I do think that we have to be very aware of the risks of organizing any organized like seminars or things like that with people in places like Uzbekistan.
That's no, I wouldn't dare doing that because that puts a great risk.
Yeah, so we just need to keep these things in mind, and so my approach is to go forward. Find the ways in which we can address things that are, we can't really be below the radar because we live in an area where basically everything we say may be everything on my computer that my computer has access to, someone else might have access to, I might not even know about that. That's reality. At least you have to understand that's a possibility. But we are trying to basically, what I'm trying to do is to work with people to help them to be able to discuss differences without making enemies with people who stayed in the country, and do it in a way without really pressing a certain political agenda, without pressing something, but people like Konstantin and the people that he's speaking about, they got their lesson. They got their political lesson. Their life was turned upside down. My life was also turned upside down because I left, 9 years ago. These people left, 2 years ago or a year ago. But I think that what we should do is we should basically when we work with them, we should just say, if you're interested, here are some ways. Yeah, you can look at YouTube video. You can communicate with people there. You can do this, you can do that. But we shouldn't be calling out for them, at least doing that in a very careful way. when I speak to people in different countries where I visit, I mean, I say that for me, many people start saying the typical thing that I hear everywhere where I meet is that, oh, this is speaking to people in Russia is useless. They're brainwashed. It's not me saying that. It's not propaganda saying that. It's people who left the country fairly recently saying that, and they say we try. And what I'm saying is, problem is your criteria of success are somewhat wrong, because you think that you only are successful if you were able to convince someone of something. That's not the goal. The goal is that you can that you, number one, maintain relationship with that person. You still communicate with him. And number two, you can communicate with him about these tough subjects where you do disagree without severing relationships and without becoming enemies. My idea right now is, at this point, a realistic strategy is not to train people in Russia how they should do or things like that, but to simply expose them to alternative information. And if we can be successful in that, we're already achieving a big deal, because so many people, they simply do not get any alternative information.
I
I can
absolutely agree with
organize.
Andre. Andre, great
Hmm?
idea. Hands down, I think you're spot on.
I could organize a series of forums like this with speakers who could talk about, well, as Jill would be one of them, but I would, if you excuse me, Jill, but I would also include some people from the G Sharp
absolutely.
background.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that there are many different people who contributed really wonderful insights, and we should look at how they did what they did, how they succeeded, or failed but tried. Sometimes it didn't succeed, but there's something to be learned from their experiences if we do it in a systematic way. So I think I could put this on easily as a series of talks by people who've made that their academic work in English. Now, I don't know whether I can't even visualize where I would get people who could do it in Russian, because the people who have some real expertise in this are not they're not Russians, unfortunately. Tell me, I don't know how many of the escapee Russians speak English or would even be interested. Would that have any appeal, Constantine?
Meta, quite a few escapees. I call not the escapees. I call the relocants, but it doesn't matter. Quite a few speak English, and everyone is learning because they understand that in this new life, you have to know English. You have to learn how. You have to know how to speak it. But I had this idea. I think correct me if I'm wrong, but you said you can organize a series of lectures. How others did that? Not like political lectures, but historical lectures. For example, Indians, the Gandhi approach, how they did that. Okay. So, and if a person simply watches like a historical lecture. Okay, that would be fantastic. And don't worry about translating into Russian, because YouTube does that for you automatically. Okay, translate now in all the languages, and you can put Russian subtitles, and that's it. Voila.
Wonderful.
The
Okay.
quality is very, very questionable, though.
I don't know. I never had a problem with that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't really think of it in terms of lectures. I personally, I don't think that videos of lectures I don't like to watch them, and I don't think that they're very informative. I think conversations are better, but I can organize this kind of thing pretty well, because I think this has been a good conversation, useful. And I could organize, say, 6 or 8 lectures by people who've taught peace studies courses on on nonviolence, and the methods of it. And it would be in English. So I don't know how much interest there is, but I would love to do that with. In the back of my mind, it would be primarily for Russians, but if it's spoken in English, it's for everybody, isn't it? Any
Well,
thoughts?
I think lots of people would understand. That's plain and simple.
I don't know about Andre though. I think Andre's not sure.
No, I think that's a good idea. I'm not sure how many people would, from the how many Russians or from the Russian expat community would join. But it's good to have that. It
Andre,
might be,
I'll make sure many people from Tashkent will watch it.
maybe.
Mhm.
But
Okay. Well, okay. My original idea was to have more of a dialogue among escapee Russians. I love the term. I hadn't thought of it till you used it, Constantine. But I had thought it would be good to have just more general discussions among Russians about their political ideas. But I think that I think maybe this might work where that might not work. And I want to get one more sounding as to your opinion about that before we close, although we've gone way over time, but I think it's important. Any further thoughts about it? Okay. And is there anything that you were hoping you'd have a chance to say in this show that you didn't get a chance to say? Because I'll give you each more time to finish off your thoughts if you want. No?
well, I'd like to say a little bit about the Breakfast Club community. It's not the Breakfast Club is just a name. It's really the escapees community. It's real, it's large, it's powerful, and the power has been unchanneled. So basically, it's we're not going in one direction. We just, I have organized a lot of people, but that's as far as it has been so far. We have private discussions, personal discussions all the time. We share ideas, opinions, but we have not done anything publicly, officially, and so forth. Lots of good people here. Most people who have escaped Russia are white-collar professionals with high education. Lots of doctors, lots of engineers, IT people. Every third is somehow involved with IT, information technology. Lots of college professors, teachers, psychologists, good community. We have lots of experts. Basically, what we do every Sunday is we pick one person, and he or she comes with something interesting to share, and we call it a lecture. And they vary from like this, from how to save yourself from snake bites in the mountains of Uzbekistan, and
Wow.
from spiders bites, because plenty of venomous creatures here, to history of Uzbekistan, or to our stories of escape, or we talked extensively about our stories, how we feel, what we have gone through, and then we organize lots of meetings with discussion what to do next. As an expert comes and says how to get a visa to the United States, to Canada, to European Union, what needs to be done, what steps, and so forth. So it's a support community, and then first, and then it's not political organization, but it's the angriness community, if you know what I mean, political angriness that is present in each one of them. The reason I tried to extend the Breakfast Club idea is I feel there's a lot of possibilities of uniting Russians. And this is the first time it's being done in the world. because Russian diasporas, they really non-existent. Andrew, I think you would agree with me. There's one big one in New York City, but it's not organized, if you know what I mean. It's not what I would call diaspora, but this is the first time in history that we are united by a common goal or by a common problem, by a common tragedy, so to speak. And that can be used as glue to glue everyone together. So I feel like there's a great potential in many countries, and you were discussing earlier which countries people moved to. Like, I think, Meta, you asked if India is a good place. I have not heard of many people going to India from Uzbekistan, or Russians going to Uzbekistan, but they go to mostly Southeast Asia, Sri Lanka, Thailand, especially if they work remotely. All they need is internet access. Designers, teachers who teach online, IT programmers, testers. Then Sri Lanka, Thailand, Bali. Then they go to Central Asia, Uzbekistan, Georgia, Kazakhstan. That's top 3 destinations. And a lot of people try to make it to the USA, Canada, and Europe. It's extremely difficult. The most riskiest way is to go to Mexico and try to cross the US border and apply for political asylum. Lots of people do that, but with various degrees of success, And lots of people go to even Mexico and, Dominican Republic, even Argentina, believe it or not. But I know that people have gone to Argentina. How do I know that? Because at breakfasts, and Andrew, he visited our breakfasts, remember, it's a hub, really. I see it, some people who come regularly see it, and someone shows up and says, hey, I have a question. I'm thinking of going to Argentina. Can you help me? And someone's like, oh, I know a guy who helps with visas. And another person goes, oh, I know who went to Argentina already. And then we connect people. And this is how it works, okay? I saw that in synagogue once. I attended synagogue. I'm not Jewish myself, but I was invited quite a few times. And this is how their Jewish community is. A synagogue is more than a temple. It's a place where people help each other, and that's what I've been trying to model the Breakfast Club after a synagogue. And so I feel there's great potential, this anger. And there's opportunity to create, for the first time in history, to create this real global community. Okay. We've been looking at the official opposition. Lots of folks such as Khodorkovsky, Katz, Milov, they are in Europe, in the United States. They try to organize, but they fight with each other. They pull the blanket to themselves, and there's nothing, absolutely nothing. So, and it's not masses, it's just some figures, political figures who try to act independently. What I'm looking at is there's like millions of Russians all over the world now, and they can be organized. But again, I feel like I'm running against the wind, and it's really difficult. I'm not a professional. I came from business. I was an executive, had my own business a couple times in life, and this is a completely different new area to me. So
Well,
it's pretty much
all I want is to be able to contribute a little bit. And I'm looking for ways in which I could help. And I have no idea, but that's what I've been exploring. And I think this conversation is, from my point of view, it's been oriented toward trying to find a way in which maybe I could help a little bit.
Meta, you have already helped a great deal, trust me, because what happens when I go in the morning, and we usually have like news updates every morning. So what's up? What happened? And I tell them, there's a person in Toronto, Canada, and her name is Meta Spencer, and she cares. And I tell about our conversations, I tell about you, and that makes our lives, more cheerful. That helps a lot.
Oh my goodness, what a sweet thing to say. I appreciate that.
Well, it's true. Knowing that we are not alone, that people in the West care, does wonders, because at this point we're sitting in Uzbekistan and we feel like we're stuck. We're on our own because no one wants us. We're like stray dogs. Okay, Uzbeks can, well, we don't need visas, all right, but they can also say, hey, you know what? For some reason, we don't want you to Uzbekistan, in Uzbekistan. Where would I go? Where would I take my family? My son goes to school here in Uzbekistan. Okay, so what to do next? And I feel I'm absolutely rightless. Okay, and if I want to go to the West, say no, 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 no. We take only rich, corrupt Russians who come to spend money that they stole from the Russian taxpayers. Oh, we take those. Are you those? No, you're not politicians. Oh, you don't support the war. We only take the ones who support the war. That seems like what's going on in Europe, in Canada, and the United States. You know. Oh, if you don't support the war, stay where you are. You know.
Well,
they don't
Constantine, I mean, the proof of that is that I've been trying for 6 months to organize a follow-up conversation about how to help Russians who are stranded in a country they don't particularly want to stay in, how to get them to a place where they would like to be. And I can't get any experts to talk about it. And and these are good Canadian diplomats and former, this and that. I can't get people to talk about it. So I'm working on it, but I haven't forgotten, but I haven't succeeded either. So anyway.
I know, Mika, and I really, really appreciate it. And that's one of the reasons I tell, hey, look, there's a person who cares about us. And it makes a world of a difference, okay?
Well, bless your heart, thank God.
And you are absolutely right. And we can't even get to the embassies. They say, well, you're in Uzbekistan, but you're a Russian citizen. Well, why don't you go back to Russia and go to our embassy there? Because, that's how it works. So, are you crazy? We're not going to go back to Russia. But anyway.
Yeah.
So,
well, we keep working on it, Constantine. I promise you, for sure.
Thank you.
Maybe there's
Thank
hope.
You so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Jill, you've agreed already, I think, that if we try to put something together along the lines that I've suggested, maybe dialogues or conversations among people who have some expertise in nonviolent resistance methodology, that we can put these on and you'll be party to it, right?
Absolutely.
They're from here, or you're going back to India pretty soon, and you're going to go by way of Georgia. So there are people in Georgia who might also be able to talk about it. Okay. And I have the feeling Andre is still not totally not
no, I think it's a good idea. It's worth trying it out. I hope people are interested and join in. So yeah.
Okay, well, to be continued. I hope, because I've enjoyed this, and I've learned stuff, and I think other people will learn from it too. So this is sort of the onset of a project, let's say. Thank you all, and I want to say goodbye for now, but to be continued soon. Thanks.
And I just want to say what a pleasure it is to meet both you, Constantine and Andre. I feel
thank you very much.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Yeah,
it's great. Okay, bye.
By the way, Meta, one question I had: if I show up in U.S. or maybe I don't know January, February, would you have any ideas? Maybe there would be some interest in me presenting at universities.
I'm not hearing you. Would I have ideas about what?
If I show up in the U.S. in a couple of months or so, any ideas of where I could present, universities or other places, different groups of interest, speaking about both what's happening in Ukraine, what the Russian and all that.
Well, one is, what's it called? Starts with a Pomar or something like that. I've watched 2 excellent presentations about Russian expatriates. One was a guy who had been a professor of political science at St. Petersburg and who is an escapee himself. But I wanted to interview him on this series, but he's too busy trying to find a job, because he's, in the same situation as all the other guys, can't find his way through. Excuse me. There is a woman who gave the talk there. So I could try to contact those people and see if they'd like to invite you to give a talk. But there are lots of other people, peace studies people, who might be able to set things up. And of course, in Canada, we could it'd be easy to set up opportunities for you to give talks. In the U.S. is a little more complicated, but I'll work on it. Okay.
Yeah,
that
thank
help?
you. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you all,
Thanks,
and
Tasha.